a little overview, what's new in Laserfiche 10 for those who haven't been exposed. Of course, Laserfiche 10 has just come out, was released and Empower during the early part of January. And it's being slowly rolled out to a lot of different organizations, and frankly, the results have been very, very positive. We've heard just amazing things from people upgrading, and it's one of the smoothest upgrades of Laserfiche that we've seen. And so for this brief overview, I'll be going into the client, workflow, web access, which is the browser version of Laserfiche, the Laserfiche mobile, and WebLink 9. So we're going to start with that thick client and the installed client of Laserfiche and what's new in 10. The main things are start entries, import profiles, which are amazing, and we'll get to that. I'll show you guys this live in a second. Recycle bin search. Previously, you could you had different one recycle bin. Now you've got individual recycle bins, and you can limit the searching options for who can see what there. There's new PDF compression options and a great one about template-specific required fields. And I'll get into that in a little more detail in just a second here. All right. So one of the first things that jumps out right away you can see is this starred option. So now we can add stars. It's kind of a favorite thing. It makes seeing some of the documents a lot easier. So we can click on a document, scroll down, and remove or add star. And that'll make it really quick access to a couple of frequently used documents. Very, very helpful in terms of going over again and again with the same stuff. And under that same vein, Laserfiche also added this great new utility called Import Profile. Now, Import Profile, the way it works is that if you're dragging and dropping a lot of documents into Laserfiche and you want to do something regular with it, you want to assign a specific template, you want the naming conventions to be the same, such as, say, you've got all the documents start with an ID number and a date and some other piece of information. You want Laserfiche to know to take that information, use it as field data, and then also route the document, push the document around. So this is super easy to do. We can select, obviously, the default template, the volume, scanning name, and then here are some of the other additional features. Let me get this out of the way here for you. So yeah, you could definitely take that file format name and then add additional token and metadata stuff. So this really streamlines the process of adding documents into Laserfiche. And you can see that come up if we let me try to add a document really quick, just so you can see where it pops up. So if we add something on, oh, and you can now add the star. I'm not sure why, but there's usually a box here that'll let you pick because we don't have one created with this particular profile, but usually there'll be a box right here where you can select the different profile available for import. So that's a huge, huge time saver. So we've got the recycle bin search. We can lock down individual recycle bins, allow only admin access to multiple recycle bins. There's some new PDF compression options. If you've worked with Microsoft Word, I'm sure all of you have, you notice that when you save as a PDF, you get a couple of different options for saving that and as a compressed or as they say a web publishing version. And that'll save you on space. It'll crunch the images a little bit, but oftentimes documents that don't contain images will do just fine. And so you can save some space there. Sure.
Did they fix it so every member, you have the option for your member to kind of leave out where you work? So, for example, our case managers, they have their own folder in your box. And they have to drill down every time to go through every single kind of stuff. She doesn't remember where they were before. There's no option to say stuff. I know you got the SCAR thing, which maybe can be kind of used like that. I'm just curious what they do.
I'm sorry, Jessica, I don't understand your comment. Do you want to pop in here and?
If you always want to open Laserfiche to a specific folder, you can drag that folder from your Laserfiche repository and drop it on your desktop. And then it will open, when you double click to open that shortcut that gets created, it opens directly to that folder. But it couldn't be any easier here, yeah, because you shouldn't have to drill down every time. So
yeah, so if you were working on something.
They just have their own shortcut.
Yeah.
And if you were at the end of the day and you got at a certain spot, you could certainly. Yeah, absolutely. Sure. So the question for those online was, can you create shortcuts to get quick access to documents and places where you left off work? And absolutely, we can do that. All right, so one of the big changes, and this is just, we've heard a lot about this, maybe one of the biggest features is this template requirements, template field requirements page. So let me pull up my admin console here. Why isn't it showing me the menu? So one of the biggest changes was that when you had a field that was required in one template but not required but on another template, it would have this issue where you had to have it required on both templates. And that's now been solved. So you can have the same field data in multiple templates, but it's not locked down in the one. And that is, it seems obvious, and it really absolutely is, and it took Laserfiche a while to fix that, but now I know a lot of you are nodding your heads in thankfulness that you are able to have, still collect that data, but not make it required on multiple templates.
What about this? So you have the same field, but you must have a different list.
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand your question. Could you repeat it?
Data type, the data type's called list,
Mm-hmm.
and then whatever you put in that list is the same for all the templates. Can you make it different for each template?
The best way to do that, to make dynamic fields so that you have different values in the dropdown for one, say the HR department has different document types than the planning department. The best way to do that is with what's called a dynamic template field, where you set up a table basically in SQL that shows which values should be in that template based on another field selection. So they select department first, and that tailors down all the dropdowns they have for the rest of their template. Oh, Patrick's already going to talk about that next, so you'll get to see it in real life because that's the next topic, data.
So the question was regarding having drop-down lists and dynamic template fields, and if they could be different between templates. And we'll be addressing that later on in more detail. Some of the other fun things about Laserfiche 10 Client are the improvements to audit trail. There's a lot of visual improvements, the ease of search with that. There are search improvements. I can't really show that one, but it's indexes faster, it's more responsive, it is quicker. So search is better, and also the ability to lock down settings. So workflow 10, a couple of highlights. We just went over at length the Word to document activity, but there are several that I believe were covered earlier with Jessica's presentation, but essentially Laserfiche Workflow 10 means a tighter integration between forms and workflow. You can have workflows kick off forms and vice versa, and there's lots of pushing and pulling of data back and forth. So that's kind of nice. You've got a little more tools at your disposal. There is the ability to create automatic reply activities. So if you want to have Exchange set up an automatic reply, that's what that activity will do. There's a PDF metadata activity. I think this is particularly useful for a lot of organizations that really want to redirect that PDF metadata, like keywords, title, author, subject, get those off of PDFs or put them on the PDFs as they are pushed out as well. And then, of course, there is the kind of the bigger one for some organizations is the ability to have a better calculations. So now workflow can do all of those Excel calculations that would previously required additional script to do. So it's a lot more streamlined and powerful to add those activities to your workflow. All right, now we're going to jump into web access. I think at least visually, this is the biggest change of any product in Laserfiche 10. And we'll be covering some of the new interface, the ability to stream media out of it, importing cloud services, records management, report generation, and within document search with context. So let's hop on over. This is kind of embarrassing. Super embarrassing.
You're gonna make it smaller.
Can I just exit? All right. All right. All right, let's hop over to web access. And we've all written down the free barcode font site. Okay. All right, so the first thing I noticed when I first saw Web Access 10 was there's definitely some similarities between this product and the Microsoft Office suite. You start to see some similarities with how just the feel, the overall feel of it is, and that's certainly by design. One of Laserfiche's strongest advantages has always been its familiarity to Windows users. So that initial learning curve is much lower. And as we see that the search repository is here at the top with your quick search. We've got that familiar folder and file structure. Documents in use, these are documents that are being checked out and locked down at the current time. We've still got access to starred documents. And again, it's just a right click to remove the star on these. Open recent documents as your very common search, so that's really easy and it's right there.
Just to add to the place that the user left off last, this might be a great solution right there. Recently open documents, they've got all their most recent
Access web apps.
Well, use the client history too. In Laserfiche 9 and 10, there's also most recent documents that are that too.
So most recently opened goes back to getting to where you just were at. One of the biggest changes is this records management little tab here, it's very easy to search for documents eligible for cutoff, disposition, vital records for review, instead of our records managers who previously had to have complicated searches saved. They now can just click and view those. Tian, go ahead, you had a question?
If users using web access and they want to check out a PDF document, and they edit it, and then check it back in?
If they have permissions to, they will be able to. No, the question is, can a user who checks out a document make adjustments to the document and then check it back in with the changes? Laserfiche does support that version control as well. So the answer is yes, as long as they have privileges. And then, of course, your recycle bin. So you can search your recycle bin. A lot of the changes are really let's get this guy out of the way here. Are just kind of, it seems obvious after you get used to Web Access 10. The functionality is the same, but oftentimes there are different names, like column picker helps you choose which columns are going to be displayed, and that's just for ease of use. A lot of the big icons have disappeared, and let's see if we drill up a little bit. We can see some of these were previously available under a right click. So we've got new folder, download, import, scan, email. And if we click on more actions, we can generate report, start a business process, record actions, or advanced searches as well.
You know what I really like? The color. You see that color in the middle of the screen? Nope.
Yes, there's also the ability to add colors. You can, it's kind of like tags. You can quickly visually see the differences between document templates or any number of limiters you set up. You can add those colors to. The advanced search is now located over here. And you can see it's still got all the good stuff, but there are a couple of changes to the naming conventions. Advanced search is now called search syntax. Let's see, name. Let's quite see. Name ID. It's a little bit different. Now you can search on business processes. So there are a couple of updates here, but it's mostly the same, just a different spot. What I really like is when you click on a document, if you remember the previous versions of Web Access, it would open it in that little paned window. And if you had multiple open, it was difficult to work between documents, but now it will automatically open in a new tab. Let's see. Let's see if I can find something fun. The nice new feature of continuous scroll makes it easy to go through that particular document if there are multiple pages, but there aren't for this one here. It has kind of the look and feel of an embedded PDF reader in a lot of ways. We're able to expand to the full screen. Maybe. On the right here, we've got metadata fields, annotations, and more information. Oh.
I think that's Wi-Fi.
Having
I think that's the Wi-Fi.
Is Wi-Fi back? We back?
Now you're
I'm feeling good. All right, this is great. Back in business. I didn't even know I was out of business. All right, so now we've got a very easy way to go full screen. We've got the tools on the top, the ability to still add our annotations and whatnot. But one of the features that I really like is this search in document. This is going to give you that same level of context hits that you had in the main repository, but now you can use those tools and all of that advanced searching in the document. So it makes it a little bit easier for those who have become quite good at searching in the Laserfiche client. So again, we've got metadata, fields, you can see all of that there, annotations, and under more, we can see processes and records if there were a records history there available. So with that ability of tabs, I think one of the big gains for me at least is using multiple monitors and working with multiple documents is a whole lot easier now. I get a lot more done. Increasingly, we're seeing organizations also storing other non-document types of files in Laserfiche, and so Laserfiche 10 does through web access support streaming, so you don't need to download. There are several formats that are supported, but they are browser dependent. And let me pull up my little list of supported file types. It's the .wav, the .ogg, the OGV, WebM, MP4, MP3, WAV, Opus, and a couple of other file types too. So if I know there have been organizations with bandwidth issues of having to download everything to look at stuff, and this can kind of ameliorate at least a little bit of that need there. There is additionally a integration with some cloud import services, so you can, with web access, import documents directly from Google Drive, OneDrive, and OneDrive for Business. So this is, again, kind of bringing everything all together a little more simply, a little more quickly. Those are some of the big highlights. And it's worth noting that what I'm showing you isn't the exhaustive list of what's new in 10. These are just the kind of things that jumped out at me when I looked at it. And of course, web access is still web content accessibility compliant. So if you've got a whole range of different users with different needs, you're going to be okay using Laserfiche web access. Laserfiche mobile, I know a couple of you here were at the user group in Vancouver not too long ago where I presented on Laserfiche mobile, so I'm sorry for a little bit of the repeat there. This is a really, really great addition if you haven't tried it yet. A lot of the organizations I'm looking around the room here, I know have access to mobile, but I don't know if you've deployed it yet. It's free in all of the respective app stores or Play stores, so it's Android, Windows, and Apple all have it available, and it's free for download even if your organization doesn't have it, and you can kind of get the look and feel of the product. If you need to capture documents on the go, if you need to upload receipts later, it is really quite good for that. You can set it to offline read, so you can download documents and then check them later.
Does that require separate licensing from the client?
If you have web access, you have access to and of Ontario. It's on that platform. And this is all part of also the forms kind of movement of Laserfiche, which is not only capturing data from multiple locations, but making data and data capture outside of the office as well. It's kind of part of that movement.
So you can do that offline?
Yeah. And then upload when you're back online. The common use case, I guess, at least internally at Cities Digital, is when we're traveling, especially if we're on an airplane and you want to do some receipts while you're sitting there doing nothing. So you can capture those, add some metadata to it, add a signature if necessary, and then when you're back online, it'll shoot back up. Or when you have access to your organization's Wi-Fi requirements. And I really highly recommend just giving this a whirl. It's free. I was very impressed with, let's see the screenshot here, where the auto crop, it's almost fun. And there's a delight when you see elegant software working and you're like, wow, this is exactly how I imagined it. And it is. I was blown away by how easy it is to use. I'm very, very impressed. And these are, looks a little bit different under the iPhone. Signature tool, again, very easy to sign. So if you've got somebody who's out of the office frequently and you need to get the signatures from them, it's still capable if you're going to allow them to use the mobile device. It is worth mentioning, though, that the mobile app does require a full user license. WebLink 9 has a new and retooled interface, better customization and search options. Maybe if we could poke around on WebLink a little bit. There are a lot of bookmarks. So you're able to customize searches a little bit more. The browsing options are set up here. There we go. It's very snappy. I think it's a lot easier to use. It's a little more intuitive. Ooh. Search still gives you those searches that you've been used to in the main client. But overall, the response has been pretty positive with WebLink. And of course, there's the ability to use CSS to customize it to fit really nice and snugly into your existing web page. Yeah,
Does WebLink 9 go along with 10 version, or can you still be like on version 9.3?
Yeah, you can absolutely be on version 9 of WebLink and not and version 9 of Laserfiche. You aren't required to be on version 10. And WebLink 9 was also released, I believe, in November of last year, so it's a little earlier than the 10 releases. WebLink was kind of due for an update, so I'm glad to see that they've made some big changes there. Additionally, I don't have these installed on our virtual machine here, but Laserfiche Social BPM for Rio users, it's kind of like Laserfiche Answers, but it's for your own organization, so you can have discussions about specific topics and documents, and keep that as part of the data that you're collecting. And there are tools in web access to access those discussions as well. So that is kind of a fun new tool. And that wraps up my highlights of what's new in Laserfiche 10. Patrick and Jessica, is there anything you'd like to add? Some cool, fun things that that we didn't highlight?
Well, we've got a lot to look at with Connector 10. So that just came out in the last week or two, so we'll be looking at Connector 10. And we'll be looking at, see, there's also an update to Import Agent recently. That was actually Import Agent 9, but still relatively new. So Import Agent being able to generate searchable pages right on the fly when it imports, that's a new feature, so look for that. Other than that, well, it'll be mostly what we're going to cover in just a few minutes about workflow here. So we'll go from there. All right, seamless transition. We're actually right back on schedule. So we've got a full hour to film, or 45 minutes to an hour, hour 15. Plenty of time. So what I'll be covering here today is the data toolkit. Now, this is not a defined toolkit per se. There's a lot of different toolkits that Laserfiche has, primarily the API or software development kit. But we're talking about how can we actually utilize our data with some of the features that Laserfiche has to be able to pull in data and export data. So the different toolkits that Laserfiche has in all the different products, how can we use that to share information from our third-party applications directly back to Laserfiche? Why do we even care about that? The big issue is that we want to be able to take, what was that? Oh, thought I heard something. I've got a guy standing on his head back here, right behind you. It's going to be very distracting. He's doing yoga stand-up, and I don't know how I'll keep focused, but I'll try. We're on a university campus here, you know. So really, you know, we're talking about why would we actually even be concerned about this? We've got data that might be in an accounting system. We've got data that might be in an HRIS or human resource type solution. Maybe we've got data in an Excel spreadsheet somewhere. Maybe it's a customer list in Salesforce. There's really a lot of places that we have data squirreled away that can help us automatically name, file, and index our documents, thereby saving our users time. That's really what the ultimate goal with Laserfiche is that we save everybody's time and we make ourselves more efficient. So when we talk about the data toolkit, there's a number of features that really help us that are underutilized or less known features in Laserfiche, and that is the metadata manager. So we'll take a look at that. We'll take a look at the workflow manager as well, administrative console for workflow. We'll take a look at mapping metadata in quick fields, which is a really, really common tech support call, which isn't really tech support. It's really much more of just a configuration, but people have trouble with that. So we'll take a look at that as far as accessing data from quick fields. Forms, Jessica touched on a bit today, being able to pull in metadata directly from forms. So someone might type in a user ID and maybe it'll look up their name and information, or maybe they type in a customer ID or a personal, or excuse me, a property identification number, and it looks up the address, something like that. So those kinds of lookups can be there and can be added. Lastly, we'll look at Laserfiche Connector 10. So this is, again, really new. And what's interesting with Connector 10 is that we're able to not only extract information off of a web page, but we can take that and push that into Laserfiche forms. So you might be filling out a form that's dependent upon something in another program. And Laserfiche can actually take that and push it into Laserfiche forms. So here's the scenario we'll look at towards the end, is scraping out customer information out of QuickBooks Online. That's the best I could do for our demo today, but a lot of people have used QuickBooks before. So taking customer information from QuickBooks Online right off of the screen and pushing it directly into Laserfiche forms. Now, we've also done the same thing with Salesforce before, and there's no reason you couldn't do it with something like Odyssey for the courts, or Munis for a lot of the cities and counties around here, or Acela. I mean, there's really a lot of options for how Connector can be used. So we'll look at all that. But before we proceed with the rest of this, I want to make sure everybody knows the value of coming to these user groups and signing up for the webinars is that you get real-time, up-to-the-minute information about Laserfiche, the latest, greatest information, literally sent to me while we're eating lunch. So here's the latest and greatest update. For those of you that are still on United or Team, which is frequently referred to as Classic these days, that's Laserfiche's terminology, you will now be able to add Connector to your system. So that's brand new as of a few minutes ago. We just learned that. So if you really like Connector and you're still on United, you can choose to add it. That'll be something you'd want to talk to our account managers about. Other up-to-date information about Laserfiche 10.1, again, just emailed out a little bit ago. We'll have offline mobile for forms in 10.1. That means that you can actually fill out forms on your mobile device, keep the data on the device, and then upload it to the form server once you're back online. So you can imagine people out in the field maybe can't connect because of VPN issues or firewall issues. They can fill out forms while they're on their mobile device, come back to the office, and they can jump on Wi-Fi in the secured office environment and upload all their forms. So pretty neat feature there. And we'll update you on the rest of the items that were emailed out to me later, but those are the big items. So up to the minute news. All right, so let's take a look at some of this data and how we would control that. So first thing I want to talk about are external tables. This is one of these features that I try to get everybody excited about during our sales process, being able to have real-time drop-down lists in our indexing. So templates, just in case anybody's new, there are some new people here or some people who don't use Laserfiche every day. Templates are those index fields that Ryan kept showing, and he was mapping index fields. Laserfiche calls those templates. And inside the metadata management area, which you can see displayed up over here on the left-hand side, we have an area for external tables. And that allows us to link data directly to those drop-down lists so that we're able to use that data. We can have it auto-populate or real-time via drop-down list. So how we use it at Cities Digital is we have it linked to our CRM. So all of our customer information, anytime we add a new customer to our CRM, it shows up in a drop-down list for us in Laserfiche, or in Laserfiche when we classify documents. And you can see here on the right-hand side, these are all different tables we have. So we use them for a whole bunch of different things. Now let's take a look at specifically how we would map that. So you can see when I selected the specific external table, I can show exactly where it's located. So there's a database name. This is all a SQL Server table. So anybody who's thinking about going back and trying this out, it's got to be a SQL Server database within your SQL Server. So that's where Laserfiche will look for it. And you can see the database name, you can see the schema, and then the table name. So you have to know that information. It's a little bit advanced. Yes, Tim?
Can the SQL table be an external database server rather than Laserfiche?
It doesn't have to be in Laserfiche. It just has to be attached to SQL Server.
So it doesn't have to be, it has to be on the same SQL instance as the Laserfiche.
I believe it does, yeah. There might be somebody out on the web that can find where it can be located elsewhere, but I'm pretty sure it has to be the same SQL Server instance as the Laserfiche database itself. And then you can see they're listed in the box there. It says the database name, the schema, and then the table name. So then over on the right-hand side, you can actually see the external table. So you can choose to click View, and it'll show you what's inside that table. So you can kind of just get a little bit of a sample there before you proceed. Now moving on to the templates, one of the topics that came up a few minutes ago was the dynamic fields, where we can have one list with a whole bunch of document types, but maybe each department should only have those document types relevant to each department. So if you click on templates, and then you choose the specific template, again, this is the grouping of index fields we're talking about. We're talking about a template. Here's my template. In this case, it's my consulting departmental files template. And you can see all the fields listed down below. And I can choose to have a dynamic field. So you see that instead of the general, where the arrow is there, is on top of general, click on the dynamic fields. And this is how we configure a dynamic field. So we've got the external table. It's actually looking at that external table for me to be able to find all of the specific list of document types. And it'll show you the field name, category, subcategory, doc types, what it's supposed to load there. And you can choose how it sorts and so on. So this is how you would set up a dynamic field. Just go into templates, choose dynamic fields. Jessica, any tips to add to that, creating a dynamic field?
Keep in mind what order you're going to have the fields and pare it down and put those in the same order on the template. So category first, then subcategory, then doc type, so that your choices keep getting more and more narrowed down. That's the only thing.
Okay, awesome. Real-time field data. This is the part that I mentioned earlier. This is what we use all the time. So here's just an example. If I wanted to index one of my contracts that came in from a customer, we have a new city maybe implementing Laserfiche, and I want to classify it. This is the template we actually use. So you can see there where it says client name, category, document type, document identifier, et cetera, et cetera. And if I click that drop-down list, that's going to give me a real-time list of all clients that I have access to from Microsoft CRM. I have that database being replicated to SQL so that it's real time in that drop-down list for me. This is something you could easily do. So again, if it's property identification numbers, if it's students, it might be employee list, again, real time, just to make it easier to classify those documents. Instead of having someone type it all in, we just pull from that pick list, and you can start typing in the field to narrow it down as well. So using data that's outside Laserfiche can help. Here's an example of those dynamic fields we set up. So you can see over there on the left-hand side, we've got the consulting category. Once that's chosen, you can see annual consulting and audits. We have a subcategory list down below, so that's a refined list for us. And over on the furthest on the right-hand side, we choose a different category for development planning. We have two different, we have conversion and custom development. So again, different choices for our users based upon the document type or department type. Any questions about that? Okay. These will all be available, so in case you wanted to go back and set these up, you can use all of these slides. So we've got workflow queries too. This is kind of exciting. Utilizing workflow to add to these dynamic lists. So instead of having to have just one empty or one static list, we can use it. We can use our own Laserfiche system to add to that list, continually keeping it updated. So what we'll do is utilizing the insert data function, we'll update these data sources. But first we have to create the data sources in workflow. So you'll see highlighted here under data sources, and this is again the workflow administration console, different from what we were just looking at, which is the Laserfiche server administration console. So this is different. If you have workflow on a different server, you'll find that workflow administration console on the other workflow server. So we end up mapping our external tables, and we can access them through our Laserfiche workflow designer. When we want to be able to invoke those data sources, here's an example of where they show up. So in this case, I've got a query professional number. I'm going to actually look up an employee number. So I'm going to do that employee lookup to my employee database. And just by using the query function, you can see that up there on the workflow diagram. If I look on the right-hand side by the data source, that's where that external table shows up. And I can select from all my different data sources. And down below, it'll show me the column and the value. So the column will be the personnel number that's in that external table. And then the value will be one of my tokens that I'll use to match that up. Now we'll take a look at the insert data function. So we did a query looking up that personnel number. Now it's adding to that instead. So we have the insert data function, and of course we'll do a data source lookup, which we've added to our workflow administration console. And you can see that when I use the insert data function down below, it's going to allow me to map all of my metadata fields, or those index fields we looked at earlier, to the column. So kind of going in reverse now, mapping it to the columns in SQL Server if we want to. Pretty advanced function here, but does anybody use the insert data function? Anybody use that? Tina does. Excellent. Can you share with us what you use it for?
Journal entry. We have a table in SQL that will generate the journal entry number.
Okay, journal entries. Okay, so for accounting,
Yeah.
do you have that tied to a specific program?
Yeah.
No?
So just for unique, generating unique ID.
ID.
Okay, so a unique ID generates a unique ID and inserts that into the data set. Okay, excellent. Excellent. Anybody else? Excellent. Bonnie, just curious how you use it.
Anyways, the biggest way that we use it right now is with our prosecutor system. We do a database lookup on theirs, and we populate our PDF ones with their information.
Okay, so doing a data lookup with the query in the last screen. So doing a data lookup to your prosecutor system. Okay, Damien?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, to Damien. And then inserting, did you say you do insert?
Yes, sir.
Into a PDF?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we use the data to insert directly into a PDF, and then when you generate what? What do you generate with the PDF, if we can ask?
Our legal documents and courts, we sign them, the judges sign them, send them, workflow moves them through the system.
Oh, that sounds like an excellent Laserfiche system. Wow, exciting, moving all that stuff through the courts. Okay, excellent. Here's just a close-up look at the insert data function. Again, just mapping. You can see the columns and then the query personnel number rather, under the value on the right-hand side. So now we'll just take a quick look at that from the virtual machine, so you get an idea of how that looks. If anybody wants to jump in and try this at home. So here's just an example of our screenshot. You can see we've got a query and we've got an insert function. So all I had to do to add that was, again, just go over here to the left-hand side, grab my query data right here, drag it out here to the canvas. My data is over here on the right-hand side with my data source lookup, which is, again, all mapped to my workflow data source. And down below is where I've got my edit query. For my insert data, which we looked at earlier, again, here it is. I've got my data source lookup, and down below, I've got my mapping. So pretty straightforward right inside the workflow designer. And then the workflow administration console, again, looks like this. Laserfiche 10, not too many changes from 9. Oops, I loaded the wrong one. Workflow administration console, here we go. So those data sources, again, will be found here under External Objects, Data Sources. And we'll just look at that data source setup again. It's got the wizard, so a lot like you'd expect with workflow when you're creating in workflow when you're creating the waiting rule. Wait condition, sorry, that's what I was trying to remember. Wait condition, sorry. Creating the wait condition, it looks really similar to that. So you can see right here, ODBC connection. You can use the OLE DB as well for anybody who's familiar with those. And you can connect other options. Again, this is with workflow, not with the metadata in the administration console. So this is workflow connecting. But you can see all the different options here. So you can even use Oracle or CSV or Access. Those are all options for you as well. All right, so moving on.
May I jump in before?
Yes, please do.
So one of the cooler ways that I've seen this type of thing applied by some of our clients is when you use that workflow update SQL table to turn back on itself and provide more options to the Laserfiche users for the organization. So does anybody have somebody who should be controlling the drop-down list but can't because it's in SQL? So you want to be able to have a dynamic list and be able to populate it with values that you might need to be updated, like you get a new document type or you decide to define a new department. And you can use a document creation or adding a new template field value and then have a workflow on the backside. Take that piece of information, push it into your dynamic template field table as a new value. Then the next time somebody loads that template, that value is now in the drop-down list as opposed to having to connect to IT, waiting for them to get it in there, and then having that alternative, other field that you have to go back and check later. That kind of puts that control of what's in the SQL drop-down list in the hands of the end user where it should be. But still allows you to have that SQL lookup and that dynamic template that does require usually some sort of IT setup at the beginning.
So does it have the logic to build in to comparing that it's a new data type or new data entry? Or is that something you have to build?
So
the only reason they should be filling out the new request, either creating a new document or a new template field, is if they don't see it in the dropdown. But if you wanted to duplicate check, there would probably be a way to do that, to validate the data, because I know there's validation capabilities in there. I just haven't set it up that way.
So to paraphrase, I'll get you in just 1 second. So to paraphrase where we are, just again for everybody on the internet, good reason to use the workflow insert is if we have to limit access to the administration console, a different user that doesn't have access to the admin console might want to be able to update or add something to a list, a drop-down list in a template field. They can just fill out a template that they do have access to, a template only, and that can update that data, push it into the drop-down list, thereby eliminating their administrative access. Okay, so just a kind of a workaround, cool function workaround. Yes, ma'am, back there.
So if you're able to add fields like that, is that a default setting, or do you have to manually enable the user to be able to do that? And if that's a setting that you can change, how easy is it to change so that you can add fields to it, or you can specify you can add fields?
And the question is, should we, or is that a default function to be able to add those fields or not add those fields? How difficult is it to add that?
That's a good question. That is controlled through security typically. So what I've done is, for some of my implementations, we'll have like a workflow working folder kind of toward the bottom of their folder structure, and that's secured only to the people who should be kind of updating those list values. So they're the only people who have access to them, and then they would have all the security they would really need or access rights they would need is create a document or add a template field. That specific template field can also be narrowed down for security to edit who can see it and who can edit it. So if you're using template field addition to control it, that's another way to control it. But yeah, none of this is stuff that you would need programming for, or it's above the scope of a normal admin. It's all just things that you can configure by outlining the process.
All right, any other questions before we move on? Okay, so Laserfiche Toolkit 10, as I mentioned earlier, this is newly released, and though I'm not a programmer, Jessica is not necessarily a programmer. Our team does use the toolkit quite extensively, our development team does. Just a couple of updates for you in Toolkit 10. So you do have the LFSO, the server objects, that's been around a while. You have the document processor, so that deals with import, export of documents, converting image formats, and OCRing. You've got image enable, which allows third-party applications to connect to the Laserfiche client, so essentially popping the client up, grabbing metadata that might be in a third-party program. These are all ways, again, to leverage that external data, pulling it from somewhere else and populating a document, perhaps popping a document up from metadata that might be on your screen. Yes, Tian, you have a question.
Can it integrate with the legacy system?
Can it work with the legacy system? Is that your question? A legacy system, like you have a mainframe? Sure, absolutely. Working with a mainframe or legacy system, plenty of clients do that. We just completed an integration with Naviline, which is an AS400 application, so you might be familiar with that mainframe type solution. So yes, you can use the toolkit. Just for those of you that are thinking about, well, I'll go back and I'll load up the toolkit and I'll get my Visual Studio out or whatever you program with. It is an add-on to the Laserfiche suite, so if you have the toolkit, you can begin programming the minute you get back. If you don't, it's just a license for the server for you to be able to access all of the toolkit functions and the documentation. All right. The .NET repository access enables third-party applications to communicate with Laserfiche server. Ships with an ADO.NET provider. These are all just highly technical details here. But again, they're in the PowerPoint just for you, so in case you need to send this on to somebody or you want to review more detail later, it's here for you. You've got the .NET document services, provide service for importing, exporting, OCRing, and operations related to the Laserfiche repository. PDF exporter allows conversion of TIFF images to PDF documents during export from Laserfiche. You've got the Java repository access, or JRA, mostly for document management with no admin functionality as of yet. So keep that in mind. That was something one of our developers wanted to make sure everybody knew. The LFSO document processor library, if you're already familiar with that, the LFSO, it's using unmanaged code, I guess. .NET libraries, and then the JRA libraries. Now with all that, SDK must do, these are great tips. Ran this past the developer again, right before we put this in the PowerPoint here. But once you've decided which libraries you want to use, there's some good steps for creating a robust Laserfiche SDK. create a connection to the Laserfiche server. Obviously, you need to do that, and share an existing connection. So you want to be able to lock the documents before working on them in order to prevent the users from changing them at the same time, right? Don't want that to happen. Locking a document improves server performance by preventing a lot of the overhead that could result from potential notification and issues from the document locking and then trying to change it. So perform these actions on the documents, save the changes, release the documents release the locks on the documents, and then release the connection. So that's the proper procedure when using the SDK. I also have these in here. We're not going to go through this, but samples for you from the SDK 10, just in case you'd like to take a look at it. They're all in here. Connector. So what is it, first of all? Well, it's a tool that's designed to make really quick and easy integrations. So instead of having to code, which we just looked at all that stuff on the screen for Laserfiche Toolkit 10, which builds really amazing, integrations, but takes all your time to make them, Connector is quite simple. It's a drag and drop utility to integrate. You're able to do this without any coding, and it's based on what's being shown in my application. So what's on the screen in front of the end user is what really defines how Connector will work for you. Again, just as a reminder, if you're a United or Team user, this will be available to you as of today. So what can Connector do? It can search into Laserfiche based on what's on the screen. It can scan into Laserfiche based upon what's on your screen. And it can run other applications and push information into those other applications. So the Laserfiche Connector search, you can search for documents within Laserfiche related to incoming emails is a good example. Search documents with specific field values. Search for documents that have text within the document somewhere. So searching an outside application, using an outside application, you can populate, you can open rather the client, web access, or web link. So your three options for popping open an application to find those Laserfiche documents. And here's an example of what it looks like, though we'll see it live here in just a moment. So here I have a case number. So this is one of our support cases as an example in our Microsoft CRM database. We want to just be able to grab the case number. We can search and it'll pull up a folder where we might have supporting documentation for that case in Laserfiche. And how we do that is utilizing a button on the screen, which we'll look at. Now we can also scan by launching Laserfiche scanning, and it will automatically index with multiple values, and it'll store the document directly to Laserfiche. So directly to Laserfiche client or to Laserfiche web access, either way. Of course, we can't do web link because you can't scan in web link, so that's not an option. So Laserfiche Connector to scan, you can take a look here, we've got all these field data, all this field data we want to populate. All of that can come from right off of the screen. So here's an example. I would select the fields I want just by actually dragging and dropping right onto those fields that have the red boxes around them on the screen. That's how Laserfiche will tell you what it's mapping, and we can push it directly into those index fields. Why is that valuable? It's valuable because users don't have to type it all, right? If they've already typed it into the accounting system or the CRM or something like that, why bother typing it all over again? So run the other application, click the connector button, and then it'll launch the outside application. Now you can have as many profiles as you would like. So we're not talking about just the accounting package. Maybe we also want to link up a facilities program, and maybe we want to link this to an online service of some type, some sort of web page. You can have as many of these custom applications as you would like, and you can build them yourself. You can also store the profiles on a network drive. That's a new feature. Instead of having to store it locally on that one PC, you can store it on a network drive and then distribute it to everybody in the company and just say, go grab that profile here. Here's exactly what it looks like, and we'll do this live in a second, but you can grab the target and you just drag it right onto the program that you'd like to integrate. And Laserfiche reads the screen. Then we map it back to the token name and the content. You can see it's actually reading the screen. If you can squint, you'll see that. And it's all through this cool button you can put right up in the toolbar. You have control over how big you want it to be, so if you want it to really kind of stick out and users to see it, You want it really small because, maybe users are annoyed by that. You can just make it really small, but that rides right on top of whatever your host application is. So whether that's Chrome or Safari or QuickBooks or, Munis, or I'll just throw a few others out there because it is, who has Munis in here? Somebody's got Munis in here. All right. Only one user. All right. Well, anyway, Munis has been tested with Laserfiche connector and it works. Okay. So the connector availability right now, as I mentioned, we got the news over lunch that it'll work with Team and United as of today. So this slide is not updated, but we'll get you the pricing for that. But the connector is a 5% add-on for Avante or Rio users. There's a test utility available as well. So if you'd like to try it out, see if it'll work on those applications, you can download the trial utility and see if you can pull the fields off of your favorite application.